kind of some rules of the road for today. Madison is not Asheville. Asheville is not Madison. This is really a conceptual learning opportunity. If folks leave here with an idea that seems to make sense or that can translate, great. If you leave here with an idea or no ideas that really translate, it is what it is. We're going to let him go through his presentation. If you come up with a question or a thought, please write it down and let him keep his train of thought and flow. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be happy to take questions. Okay? Thank you all. And Warren.
Okay, all right. Hi, I'm Warren Hansen. I'm Street Vending Coordinator for City of Madison. It's great to be here. Asheville is beautiful. I've never been here before. And this is a whirlwind trip. I left Madison yesterday morning, and I'll be back in Madison tonight. And someone said, well, why didn't you stay longer? And I said, well, I have work to do. So, also, I know Judy Daniels has been in Madison because she came to visit 3 weeks ago, I think. We hosted the Congress for the New Urbanism there, and I gave almost the exact presentation that I'm going to give today, except Steve kindly drove me around Asheville yesterday, so I got to actually see it in a three-dimensional way. I find that Asheville has some things in common with Madison, and some things are very different. So, this actually is a painting by one of our arts and crafts vendors named Marcia Sparks. This is Marcia's display. Madison is the state capital. So what we have going on in Madison is city, county, state, and federal. And there are a lot of layers of things going on. And if you've seen the news, there are other things going on too. Okay. Okay, so this is Madison from Lake Monona, and I can't go into too much detail. It'll take all morning. In case you're not sure where Wisconsin is, it's a Great Lakes state. Madison is about here. As you see, Milwaukee is here. And and that's where we are. Oh, a few words about Iceland. Just kidding, of course. The reason I mention Iceland is that Iceland has an isthmus. And downtown Madison is on an isthmus. And a narrow strip of land connecting two larger land masses. Anyway, this geography has had an effect on how we do things. You don't have that. So you have more leeway to work with. Okay. Oh. Street vending works really well in Madison. Somebody gave me a list of questions asking me to list some pitfalls, the strengths and the pitfalls and all of that. And there are a few of them, but overall it works very well. And this is the PR section. This is why I think Madison works well. Street vending works well in Madison. We have a way of showing up on these lists. And Dane County Farmers Market is fairly gigantic. It has about 170 farmers and growers and ranchers. Its membership is actually 350, but none of them, they're not all there at the same time. The asparagus people are there in the spring, and the pumpkin people are there in the fall. Yeah. Oh, Ingrid's lunchbox was named Best Street Food in the USA by Bon Appetit magazine, and she's going to be representing Madison at the San Francisco Street Food Festival this year, which I'm very proud to hear about. This kind of surprised us because Chicago's in the Midwest. Oh, We're supposedly smart. You can have a lot of fun there. I guess we have a good reputation. Good for families, unusual, just as Asheville is. Good for kids, families, bike-friendly, quality of life, innovative, launch a business, relocate to, although now that I've been to Asheville, same thing. Asheville is a great getaway city, obviously. So here's our population. What is that? Sort of 3 times larger than Asheville? But that includes 41,000 University of Wisconsin students, so that kind of doesn't count. My office is literally right there, and the Hilton, which is now like this, was being built at that time. This promenade, which is only 2 blocks long, connects Monona Terrace, which is Frank Lloyd Wright evolved from with the Capitol building, and Frank Lloyd Wright was from Wisconsin. Oh, here's the grid that essentially still exists today. This is 2 blocks, this is about 4 blocks, and it's narrow. And most of our downtown streets are 2 lanes. We have a few that are 4 lanes wide, but very few of them. And that grid has determined how we make a lot of choices these days. Oh, so we don't have food trucks in Madison. This truck, which is out of an office in New York City, showed up about 4 years ago, and we started thinking, do we want this here? Do we have the space? And we officially decided that we don't. And so there are no food trucks in Madison. And it's a matter of scale. Our food carts, as we call them, are 56 square feet, which means they can be 7 by 8 feet or 9 by 6, something like that. A few years ago, I suggested that we have a 10% variance because a few really special food carts showed up and they were too big, and I wanted to be able to include them. The footprint for any kind of street vendor in Madison is 10 feet by 12 feet. You can't get any bigger than that, and it doesn't matter what you're selling. The exceptions are special events. We have a lot of special events, literally hundreds, and so the special event organizer can choose what vendors they want to include, but as it turns out, the vendors that we have that are already fully licensed and insured to be vendors in the city on a normal day are at the top of the list because they're all ready to go. They're idiot-proof. And they're self-contained. We don't have any of the elaborate structures that are built around food carts, such as in Austin or Portland, Oregon. It's just different. And we want each food cart to be different from the other. We don't want them all to look the same. So we don't allow mass-produced food carts. You can't have a food cart in downtown Madison that just came off as is from the assembly line. So this is actually a Greek father and son building their food cart by hand, and this is the cart once it's open, and it has all these little details up here. Some are actual things from the Parthenon, and some are just made up, like the origin of the euro. This one was built, here's the plan for the cart, and this is the actual cart, and it was built to Mall Concourse. I'll explain what Mall Concourse means. It's essentially the downtown. This one was built to Mall Concourse specifications. by a manufacturer. Oh, they all fit on the sidewalk, and they're all self-contained. There are no tables or chairs or benches or anything. They can have one chair just in case they have a lull and they want to sit outside in the fresh air. And they have to have at least 10-gallon trash container. The reason for that is we don't want the people who empty our public trash containers to have to do any extra work. Or in other words, you have to take the trash out with you, sort of like you're going backpacking. You don't leave it behind. Most of them use prepaid public electricity. This is not typical. Most of our lampposts, Judy knows this, you probably took some pictures. Judy, we have lampposts that have electrical outlets in them. And I'll mention, oh, and I got the 2 lists of questions, and I'm going to see how often I can remember to answer them while I'm talking through this. This is Marcos Baraka from East Africa, and he started out with a food cart, and now he has a restaurant, and he operates both of them. Oh, they have to move into and out of their sites daily, and that's for maintenance. If they were allowed to be there 365 days a year, who'd clean, who'd shovel snow? Not that that's that big of an issue for you. Anyway, he started out with a restaurant, then he opened the food cart, and then he opened a second restaurant. Oh, as Steve was driving me around yesterday, downtown Asheville is really so beautiful, I thought, and I mean this in a good way, it's an idealized place. It reminded me, I mean this in a good way, of Disney World. I mean, everywhere you look is beautiful. So this is what State Street looked like, you know, late 50s, 60s, 70s, particularly the 60s and the 70s. Okay, footnote. This says Marilyn Monroe in bus stop. Here's the bus. So, and the word revitalization was used again and again and again and again and again, and I hardly hear it anymore because it actually happened. And that's what downtown Asheville looks like. So, about 1975, the 700 and 800 blocks of State Street, and I'll show you what State Street is. It's an 8-block street that connects the state capitol with the university. And it began to attract street vendors. This is what State Street looks like today. And I don't know, in a way, I think it looks sort of like Asheville, or vice versa. Oh, here's something we do that you don't do, and this is because of snow removal in the winter and so forth, and in inclement weather. All of these things have to be removed every night and taken inside, and that's so the sidewalks can be maintained. This also reminds me of the fencing that you have around your sidewalk cafes, except, when was this? Probably 10, 11 years ago, we started having meetings about how do we want State Street to look? And I recommended that sidewalk cafe enclosures were from a small group of choices, but no, it was decided that every restaurant would have its own character. And so what I suggested actually did happen. There aren't that many different things you can do, but the only vehicles that are allowed on State Street now are bicycles, delivery trucks, and city vehicles. This is a cross street, which is why you see a car. Okay, so here's State Street, the Capitol building. Here's the main library of the university. And this is the very important library mall where we have a bunch of food carts. Here's the mall concourse vending area. It's State Street Mall, Capitol Concourse. And this is where the highest concentration of pedestrians is in Madison, and that's why it's so attractive to street vendors. And there's minimal conflict between brick and mortar and street vendors. This is the library mall, and there are no food carts anywhere along here until you get to the Capitol. We have a lot of restaurants in Madison. I don't know how many. We have, at this count, 73 sidewalk cafes. I license those also, but that's just downtown. Oh, there's plenty of space here, and there's plenty of public electricity. About generators. If you have a noisy generator, it's like turning on a lawnmower and leaving it next to your food cart all day long. It banishes customers, it offends neighbors. We don't allow them. And yes, they cost $2,000, $3,000, but they're quiet, they don't offend anyone. And guess what? They don't have to use public electricity. So, more construction. Anyway, here's the actual library mall. Here are the food carts, each with its own electrical outlet. And somebody was asking about spacing between food carts. I've never thought about what this space is, but there's usually, say, 10 feet at least. Plus, we work with the fire department who wants to maintain a minimum distance of 20 feet for emergency vehicle access. And so, I'll get to this later, but I kind of came up with a system of stencils, little ones that are blue, and so people, vendors are, there's no mystery about where vendors are supposed to go. There are these little stencils that you can only see if you're looking for them, and that tells you where you should set up your display. So here's a map of that. Last year we had 44 applicants for Mall Concourse food carts, and so for the first time I completely ran out of space, and so I made up these 4 sites, but these 4 sites required a generator because there's no electricity on the 800 block of State Street. That may change when it's sort of updated in a couple of years. I'll mention that the little squares are arts and crafts sites. We probably get 4 or 5 arts and crafts people. It's usually jewelry or painting during the week. Saturday is the big day for arts and crafts. These sites are sometimes occupied, usually during sort of Hanukkah, Christmas. Oh, so here's the library mall, and this is what it looks like every lunchtime. You saw it from the air, and here's Baraka East African cuisine, and here's Taste of Jamaica, and here's Santa Fe Trailer, and Fibs, and Hibachi Hut, and there are plenty of places for them to sit. Patrons, we'll get to that. So here are the different, when I said we stress unique, we want them all to be different, we were pretty successful with that. Venezuelan, Greek, vegetarian, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Jamaican, diner, kettle corn, smoothies, Indonesian, wraps, sushi, steamed burgers, Peruvian. Then that's the weekday, so is this. On the outer Capitol Square, as it's called, this being the inner Capitol Square, this is the outer Capitol Square. Popcorn. Oh, here's the map of that. You'll see later that on Saturdays I have a continuous line of arts and crafts people. They're the squares here and also the blue dots. The triangles are food vendors, and we have them all around the square. We also have the 11 on the outer square during the week. I have to tell you this. This block is state of Wisconsin property, territory, and if you cross the street, you're in Madison. So these are the carts we have on the Capitol Square. Oh, here's a generator. Somebody asked, are they inside or outside? This one is outside, but in a nice sort of tucked-in way. These carts are small enough that I don't think it would be practical for us to ask them to put a generator inside. This has a generator. Somebody was asking about wastewater. There are little blue containers, and that's where the wastewater goes. Saturday mornings. Dane County Farmers Market is open from about the middle of April to the first Saturday in November. And this is what the Capitol Square looks from overhead. So Dane County Farmers Market is here, and on the outer square we have the city licensed vendors. So on Saturdays we have about 20 food vendors. These are all arts and crafts. Did you notice how the total changed? Anyway, we get 15,000 to 20,000 patrons every single Saturday without fail. And coffee, they're there early. They sell out by 11 or 1. Here's Ingrid's again. She's only open on Saturdays. We have bakery. Oh, somebody was asking, should there be some kind of food review panel? You know what? I'm just going to interrupt myself. I didn't create this from scratch. I started this job, I've worked for the city since 1992, and I started this job in 1998. And the food cart review already existed, the basic system already existed, so did the ordinance and regulations and all of that. What I've been trying to do over the years is make it make more sense and just be more streamlined. Anyway, the annual food cart review, it's the last weekend in September, and I get a group of about 25 people, and they get clipboards and score sheets, which I'll show you in a minute, but the clipboards also serve as sort of laptop eating. And so all the vendors Monday through Friday have to be open from 11 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. And on Saturday, the Saturday-only vendors have to be open from 8 a.m. until noon, and the new applicants also have to be open from 8 a.m. till noon. And the reason we do that is the food vendors are reviewed in their natural habitat if they're currently licensed. And on Saturday, the new applicants don't have a site assignment, and so that's why we put them together on Saturday. This is the score sheet, and you're not going to, this is illegible, you're not going to be able to read it, but we create a rank-ordered list. Ingrid's lunchbox came in first last year. This is only the first page. There were several more on a second page, but it makes it really easy to decide who's going to be in what site. On their applications, they can all ask what they want, and for the new people, frankly, I negotiate with them, don't ask for this site or this site or this site because you're not going to get it. And so that's, actually it's survival of the fittest. So the people who have the crummiest looking carts and the most mediocre food move toward the bottom, and 2 of them were knocked out of the mall concourse last year. That's actually never happened before, but street food is getting so popular. Here's the score sheet that the reviewers get. It used to be this really complicated thing with 3.75 for this and 1.25 for that. And what I realized is that the reviewers couldn't tell who had the highest score by looking at all that gobbledygook. And so I changed it to a total of 100 points with a footnote. So food is a possible 40 points. The apparatus, that is the cart or the tent, is a possible 40 points. And originality is a possible 20 points. Originality used to be about 5% of this score, but I thought it was too important, and so I had it expanded. And then all the vendors are included, and there are more on the back. It takes all week long, and every year I have 1 or 2 new people who thought, oh, that'll be fun. They don't want to do it again because that's a lot of food. And you have to also work it into your work week. And it always rains one day. So here's the annual food cart review. She has her clipboard. She has an ID badge so that people won't pretend to be food cart reviewers and get free food all week. And there are about 25 reviewers Monday through Friday and Saturday morning, and the food's free. Oh, so there's a guy named Caleb from San Francisco who organized that street food festival and conference that I referred to, and he came to visit Madison the day of the food cart review, and so I said, I'm going to make you an honorary food reviewer, and so he did, but his scores were so accurate that I used them. And here's the other thing. He arrived in Madison on Thursday night, so he had a lot of eating to do on Friday and Saturday. And I just want to give you, that's Caleb. And he wore that T-shirt. That's sort of the insignia of the San Francisco conference. So some reviewers who didn't know each other got to meet. They shared food. By the way, this is sort of like a cement wedding cake. It's called the Podium, and there are lots of places to eat right near the food carts. He took it really seriously. So he's ordering food and eating, and ordering food and eating, ordering food, eating, eating, ordering, eating, checking out the menu, ordering. Some reviewers get really smart and realize that if there are some short lines, you can get food from 3 or 4 carts at a time and then go have a rest as you eat, which he did. This is me. A coworker walked by and said, "Oh, that would make a great shot," and took a picture. Ordering. So he did 22 carts on Friday.
Take him out to dinner afterwards?
Yes. We've been inventing some other sites because, for example, this cart was ready to open before she'd been through the food cart review, and so we have this new place because some people will call me up and they want to start on Monday of next week, and they can't do that on the mall concourse. You have to go through the food cart review, which only happens once a year. So now we have an alternative for people who are ready to go. And this is the Southeast Campus vending area. This being State Street, here's the Library Mall. And this is mostly students and faculty and some construction. Construction workers can be great for street food vendors. Oh, the stadium has over 80,000 people, as you see, and I have some vendors on game day Saturdays. We only allow vendors to set up on paved surfaces, and this is the only exception. There are 6 food vendor sites here. They're on a grassy area, but there are only 7 home games, and the grass is not going to be destroyed. If you put vendors on grass Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, within weeks the grass would be destroyed and it would be dusty or muddy. So it's much more casual there. These are people eating their food just sitting on the grass. We have ribs and steaks, cheese curds. I think Judy knows what they are. Now, here's another new thing that's going to happen. We started getting so many vendors along the main drag near the stadium and none of the sites would be assigned. They had to have the basic street vendor license, but they were sort of traditional sites that people had been for 20 years or 10 years. And so I decided to create a map of that, which isn't here, but there are going to be some designated food sites for those people. I know that there's been some talk about late night. How do you do it? How do you control it? Well, late night has probably been one of the biggest problems we ever had in Madison. It started out spontaneously on its own, probably 20 years ago on Greek Row, where the fraternities and the sororities are. There's no electricity there, and so they'd have to, any food vendors who showed up would have to negotiate something with the fraternity so that with an electrical cord they would plug into the fraternity. There was noise, and there was trash, and there were fistfights, and music that was too loud, and the most notorious of the guys who showed up there was arrested twice. That's very unique in the Madison street vending world, but his license has been suspended for a year. Anyway, so late night vending is allowed from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. Thursday through Sunday are the days that they show up, and it's the bar crowd. Wisconsin may be well respected as a university and especially for research, but it's also a notorious party town. And so what happened after that was we invented sort of a new area, this being late night vending. So the picture that you saw was taken on this little street where two vendors have been successful now for years. We allow 2 push carts only on this cul-de-sac. The library mall that is so vibrant during the day doesn't work at night. It just doesn't work. The classrooms are over here, and so there's no reason for people to walk in this direction. Nobody has used this. The Overture Center is our big fancy performance place, and that doesn't work either. So one big problem that we had was this is the largest parking ramp in town. It's several stories and all of that, and there's ingress and egress here and here. But for a while, we were allowing the larger carts to go in here, and that was creating a traffic jam and some safety hazards, and so we decided to limit it to just small carts. By the way, as Steve was driving me around yesterday, I don't know where we were exactly, but we came to a corner and there was a push cart there and t-shirts, and it was all very presentable. The push cart looked great. There was enough space. It looked good on that corner. The merchandise was presentable. The guy who was sitting on the bar stool looked presentable. I thought it was totally positive. I thought it looked great. And he said that, Steve did, that for small carts, Asheville currently has specific places where they can do business, and if they're all like that, good job. Oh. This is my assistant, Eric. He's street vendor monitor. He's half-time. He has to average 20 hours a week. But we fudge that because we're busier in the summer and less busy in the winter. And he has a clipboard of who's out every day. Have I mentioned that all Madison food vendors, with very few exceptions, have assigned sites? Nobody roams around. Oh, so this is me. This is at the top of State Street on a Saturday morning, and we are up to, I don't know, I think 63 arts and crafts vendors, and at 7:30 I get, I'm wearing the same thing. Anyway, so we have a seniority list. You'll see that the first arts and crafts vendor started in 1977, and so she's number one, and now we go to 103 or something like that, but there are a bunch of people who have dropped out. We leave them on the seniority list for 2 years. If you don't come back after the second year, then you're off the list. So for the unused portions, the unused sites, I go down the seniority list and fill in all the sites because it makes a better presentation, and people with lower seniority have a better chance of being visible. So this is the halftime monitor, who is permanent, by the way. This is a stencil, and this little circle is literally based on a quarter. Those are the dots that we use, that we put on the sidewalk, so that the tents are not, people are not guessing where their tents go. It's actually very specific. So this was the first food cart. It's changed over the years. She's the first arts and crafts vendor. She started out with t-shirts. She's Silk Screen's original designs. About in the mid-'80s, the city realized that it was time to create some ordinances and regulations, and unfortunately it turned out to be, I thought, horribly complicated. They tried to anticipate everything. All different categories, sidewalk cafes, merchant vending, all of them were put in here, and then for the mall concourse and for high density, which includes Camp Randall, there's another 26 pages, and then an additional 6 pages for high density. And what this created, they didn't know what they were doing. Their hearts were in the right place, but what it means is, to find everything on sidewalk cafes, you have to sort of sift through all of this, and then you have to sift through all of this, so that if you want to change a law, you have to make sure nothing is left out, and all of those little changes are made everywhere else. And so probably 10 years ago, I decided that the ordinance should be reorganized. The only way I could think of doing it is to make several copies, cut it up, put all the sidewalk cafe stuff in one place, all the arts and crafts in one place, et cetera, et cetera. And the current city attorney had an even better idea, and what we're currently working on is having a separate ordinance for food, a separate ordinance for sidewalk cafes. And so if you want to be an arts and crafts vendor, you just have to look at your little section. You don't have to swim through all of this stuff. So that's one of the lessons I've learned. To this day, it's sometimes hard for me to find the thing I'm looking for. We have a vending oversight committee, which started in 1998. In June, I think that's when I started. It has 10 members. 6 of them are voting, and 4 are non-voting technical advisors who are actually licensed vendors. And the reason they can't vote is conflict of interest possibility. They meet once a month, almost every single month, not necessarily. I create their agendas and meeting minutes, and I'm responsible for probably 95% of the agenda content because I know what they should talk about. The Madison Police Department, here's Eric again in the winter. The Madison Police Department can enforce any ordinance, and we work very well together. They consider me the authority on street vending, and so sometimes they'll stand back from thinking of enforcing something because they're not absolutely sure. Parking enforcement officers can also enforce parking violations. Eric and I have the authority to write tickets. I don't even remember when the last time was that I wrote a ticket. Eric got very close to writing a ticket, but over the years, I'd say that our street vendors are well trained. And by the way, this is not impersonal. I meet every single one of these people before they're out there on the street. They're not on their own. We educate first, enforce as needed. And that's borrowed from our police force, which I think is very humane. If you get 3 tickets, and that has not happened often, then you're hauled before the VOC. And what that means is you usually have your license suspended for 30 days. That's happened to 2 sidewalk cafes, and it's happened to a food vendor, and it's happened twice to that notorious food vendor that I've mentioned. And this has only happened since 1998. That's all that's happened. When I first started, they used to write an individual letter to each person who was doing something that needed to be corrected, and I thought, that's ridiculous. And so I came up with this form. I sort of combed through the ordinance and regulations and came up with infractions that were the most obvious, but always added other just in case. And when we first started, we used a Polaroid camera. And now we're digital and all of that, and so we usually just attach the picture, because if you attach the picture of the error, then there's no disputing it. Oh, and there are 3 stages. There's observation. That means you're doing something wrong and you need to correct it. It's not that serious, though. If they haven't corrected it, it almost always means they're a hard case, or they're negligent. They need extra attention. Usually it stops there. These are my responsibilities. I just juggle a whole lot of things, and I like a job that has a lot of variation and challenges and all of that, and that slide always does that. So, but whatever, I won't go into any detail about that. This is actually a health sanitarian, that's Bonnie. The vendor doesn't look too upset. They schedule, they do scheduled and unscheduled inspections. Oh, the dimensions of these size carts don't allow full-service food trucks, so the cart has to have its license and the kitchen has to have its license. And those are renewed. We make it complicated. Those are fiscal. Those start on July 1st. The street vendor license, the other licenses start on April 15th, which seem to be weather-driven, and end the following April 14th. And the site assignments allow the sanitarians to always know where to find the cart. They're not wandering around. So, this is another view of Monona Terrace, except it's during January. And as weather descends, most carts start closing down, so most are closed for the winter. This is my favorite picture. And then I happened to be around the next year on the same day, so that's where this picture came from. Then it's January and February and March, and then it's spring again. And I don't think we can get onto the internet, but we have a website if you haven't looked at it, and a lot of the things that I told you are on it. Oh, and we have slideshows of food carts and of arts and crafts and sidewalk cafes. Now, I'll just sort of breeze through this. We have a bunch of different arts and crafts vendors, as I mentioned. More and more we have vendors who are doing repurposed things. On the Library Mall, we'll have a few vendors, again, around Hanukkah and Christmas. And quickly through our sidewalk cafe section, I noticed that your fences seem to be permanent. I don't know if they go away ever. We can't do that, and it would be impossible during the winter. It just wouldn't work. And originally, all the sidewalk cafes had to be out toward the curb because that's where the public amenities are in Madison. And eventually I said, that's stupid. It would be ridiculous to have this sidewalk cafe all the way out here and have the servers carry food, 40 feet. So now it's case by case. That's it.